Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Village of Cary and the Board of Zoning, Planning, and Appeals, I'd like to hereby call this meeting to order on Thursday, September the 10th, 2020 at approximately 7:05 p.m. We have a quorum of members, and at this time, I'd like to ask our Director of Community Development, Mr. Brian Simmons, to please call the roll.
Williams? Kretschmer? Graziano? Here. Jasper? Here. Dudek?
Here.
O'Loughlin?
Here.
Walrath?
Here.
Corey?
Here. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to rise with us for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, gentlemen. So, Mr. Crane, good evening. This is Patrick Corey, and I think you probably understand the process tonight, but in the event that you don't, I just want to make sure, I don't know if there's other people joining us as citizens, but the way this typically plays out on our side is that we ask Mr. Simmons to give us an overview of your petition, and then we as the ZPA members may have some questions for Mr. Simmons. And then once we conclude that part of the meeting, we typically ask you to provide any additional comments or color that you think is appropriate for the petition. And again, the ZPA members may have some questions for yourself. And once we close that part of the meeting, then we open it up to the public. And I can tell you, Mr. Crane, here in Village Hall, there is no one assembled here as the public, but we are required by law to do that on behalf of your petition. And then we close that piece of the meeting. We take a vote, and then this will get delivered, I believe, back to our elected officials for the final conclusion. So that's the process for yourself tonight. So before I do an administrative matter, do you have any questions before we begin?
No, I think that's what's going on. Don't give me this, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you guys.
Okay, I'm gonna bring the mic a little bit closer to me. Does that help at all?
Yeah, speak a little bit if you don't mind.
Do you want to try the volume?
Yeah, I just have to speak directly into the mic and should hopefully pick up.
Okay. And one other matter, everyone, tonight, because this is a variance, I know the gentleman here at the dais would be aware of this, that our 8th associate member who recently joined us, Mr. Walrath, because this is a variance, he's not allowed to vote as the 8th associate member. However, he is allowed to participate and ask questions throughout the process. So, Mr. Walrath, I know you've probably read the application, and anytime you have questions or comments, please feel to jump in. But unfortunately, you cannot vote tonight on the variation.
Understood. Thank you, Mr. Corey.
You're welcome. Okay, gentlemen, in your packages, you would have received some meeting minutes dated July the 9th and also for August the 13th. And most likely, I'll just do this via general consent. But before I do that, I just want to confirm that everybody has their meeting minutes.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the chair will entertain via general consent the meeting minutes for ZPA case 06001. Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Chairman Curry, I just want to make a comment. I wasn't here for the first, Miranda meeting.
Yes.
So I'm going to abstain on that, but then I vote yes on the second one.
Okay.
Just for clarification purposes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dudek. And with regard, the way we've been doing this, Mr. Dudek, it's a little bit of change from past pattern practice. We've been calling the cases separately. So I'm going to ask for general consent on ZPA case number 06004. This was for the Cary Park District. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. And now at this time, I will call village case ZPA 08001. The petitioner is Mr. Randolph Crane. It is a variation to install an accessory structure in a required front yard, section 14.4.3.2, and the location is 209 Mildred Avenue, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Simmons for an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Corey. Just to mention, there is an attendee online as well, so if there are any questions that you may have, you may submit that via the chat function in Zoom. or you can raise your hand, and at that time, we'll call on you if you do have a question regarding during the public comment portion of the meeting. Briefly, the request is for the property at 209 Mildred Avenue. The petitioner is seeking a variance to install an accessory structure in the required front yard of the property. A little background on the property is zoned R2 single family. It was constructed as part of the Fox Hills subdivision back in 1960. They're seeking, again, the variance for a accessory structure or shed in the front yard. And the plans that were submitted show the location of the shed. The petitioner did originally submit for a permit to install the shed in the rear yard. However, upon a review of the grades and of the proposed location for the shed, determined that a better location for it would actually be in the front yard due to the slope from the front of the property down to the frontage or the rear yard's frontage along the Fox River. Petitioner is proposing to install a 10 by 12 foot shed, which is the maximum permitted of 120 square feet. They will, as shown in the image here, it will meet required setbacks to adjacent property lines. Will be situated approximately 15 feet in front of the home next to an existing stone walkway. Based on the plans submitted and the dimensions of the building, it will be set back approximately 13 feet from both the front and side property lines when code would require a minimum setback of at least 5 feet. As you can see in this slide, the property does have a substantial grade difference from north to south. The front property line at the driveway location, the front elevation of the property is around 764 feet, and that decreases by 32 feet from front to back to this river frontage. From the rear of the home to the actual river frontage, it drops about 18 feet, which is where the shed was originally proposed to be in the southeast corner of the property, behind the right-hand corner of the house. Petitioner did provide some images as far as other accessory structures which exist along Mildred Avenue. Upon review of this area, staff determined that there is some uniqueness to these properties. These are the only properties within the village that are on Mildred Avenue that have both street and river frontage. As a result, development patterns in the area have seen a unique blend of placement for accessory structures, where some accessory structures have been located within the front yard of various properties. Primarily, those are detached garages, but there are a few properties that do have accessory sheds that have also been located in the front yard. In the rear yard, other structures have been constructed, including sheds, pools, decks, and patios that take advantage of the property's frontage onto the river. The few examples you can see in the images, the upper left-hand image shows the location of a shed that's a couple houses away from the subject property. And then there's a small detached garage or boathouse in front of the second image. And then the third are two recent detached garages that were approved and built in the area. The lower image on the slide shows the variability as far as where accessory structures are located. As you can see, some properties have accessory structures in both the required front and rear yards. Some just have within the rear yard, while the majority of them do have at least some structure within the required front yard. And again, the majority of those structures within the front yard are detached garages, typically built at the property line or within a short distance of there. In order to install the shed within the front yard, a variance is required, as our code requires the placement of any accessory sheds to be located in a required rear yard or behind the structure. As a result, the variation standards that are within the Unified Development Ordinance would apply. They're summarized in the slide, but generally summarize that the hardship was caused by unique circumstances relating to the land and not the general conditions of the district. The applicant has not taken any action that has caused the extraordinary condition or made it substantially worse than otherwise would have been, and the relief proposed will not alter the character of the locality. Based off staff's review of the information that's provided by the petitioner did provide some responses to those standards within their application, and staff's review of the existing development patterns within the area. Staff believes that the proposed location of the shed would be in keeping with the character of this neighborhood on the south side of Mildred Avenue along from the river, and therefore, due to the grades that exist in this area, believe that a hardship may exist that makes this property unique for the placement of an accessory structure, and therefore would recommend support of the variance request. Should the ZPA concur with that determination, it's recommended that the ZPA recommend approval of the following motion to the village board. Approval of a variance to allow for the placement of accessory shed within the required front yard of the property located at 209 Mildred Avenue, subject to the two conditions that are listed in the staff report. Be happy to answer any questions you may have, or the petitioners here as well to provide additional information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Simmons. Gentlemen, questions for Mr. Simmons?
No.
I have one, but I'm going to wait until I turn it over to Mr. Crane. So, Mr. Crane, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, sir.
Did you want to add any additional comments or color to your petition?
No, everything sounds really good. It's just, it's a tough hill to build on, let alone make it, utilize it for, I mean, 8 inches of snow or something coming up the hill. How many get the snow blower up there? You know, stuff like that is pretty tough.
Understand. So, Mr. Crane, I'll ask this question publicly to both yourself and to Mr. Simmons. I'm aware from the application that a number of your neighbors were noticed about this request. And did you personally receive any feedback, positively or negatively, or anything that we should be aware of?
No, all my neighbors were very nice. The two that I talked to, both sides of me were like, you do whatever you want, it's not going to bother us. So that's all I heard.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Simmons, did you get any feedback?
We did not receive any feedback in this position.
Okay. Gentlemen, questions for the petitioner?
That was my question, so.
I should have waited. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll open it up to the public. I'm aware that we have somebody on the Zoom application. We have a hybrid going here, obviously. Some of us are in person, some are online. And I'm looking at Mr. Simmons to see if there's a hand raised, if there's any questions from the citizen that's online with us.
I've not seen anything to date. The individual's logged in as Lisa. So Lisa, if you have a question, you use the raise hand feature within the Zoom function, and I can unmute you, or you can submit a question via the chat function as well.
We'll just wait a moment to see if this person wants to comment. Okay, so we're not seeing anything come up yet. So I think what we're going to do is assume that there's no comment.
No questions at this time.
We
You said no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa. So there are no questions, so what we will do is close the public portion of our meeting. And before I call the motion, gentlemen, any other comments or questions for yourselves? Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to recommend to the Village Board of Trustees approval of a variation to locate an accessory shed within the required front yard of the property located at 209 Mildred Avenue, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
So moved.
Thank you. Was there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graziano. Mr. Simmons, would you call the roll?
Kretschmer,
Yes.
Graziano,
Yes.
Jasper,
Yes.
Dudek,
Yes.
O'Laughlin,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. So, Mr. Crane, you have a favorable recommendation from the ZPA. My recommendation to you, sir, would be to stay in touch with Mr. Simmons, because this will go before the village board. Typically, it gets put on the consent agenda, but I don't want to be the subject matter expert on that, because I'm not 100% certain that'll happen, but most likely. Mr. Simmons would be in a better position to be able to help you with that moving forward. So we'll wish you success with your project, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. So, gentlemen, before we conclude, I just want to double check with Mr. Simmons about what might be coming down the pike.
We have no active petitions for the next meeting, so more than likely the October ZPA meeting will be canceled. I will have more information on that in the next week or so, but more likely that will not occur. I do want to kind of publicly announce, but also for this board's information, the village is working on a downtown plan for the downtown strategic plan for the downtown area of the village of Cary. Next weekend, Saturday morning from 9 a.m. to noon, we will be hosting a community open house for the public to come out and provide feedback on that plan. It's one of the initial stages of the planning process, so the plan has not been drafted at all as of yet. That's more an opportunity for our consultant team to meet the community, get some feedback from them as far as what they'd like to see within the downtown area, kind of the vision from the community for the downtown, and that'll help to assist with developing that plan over the coming 6 months to a year at this point. So if some members of the board are interested in participating in that, you are welcome to come down as well. It will be open to anybody that wants to walk in between those during the 3-hour time period. So if you're able to come at 10 o'clock for 15 minutes, you're able to do so, and then don't have to stay around till the end of the time period. So we will be operating under social distancing guidelines, so masks will be required. We'll limit the number of people that are inside the tent that will be constructed on Spring Street for the event. So our consultant will have various displays set up, and we'll control access through the event from that perspective. So that'll be next weekend if anybody's interested in participating in that coming up.
Thank you very much. And for those that may be listening in, this will be on September the 19th.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, and gentlemen, the other thing I wanted to mention to all of you is that you would have received in your packages issues related to emails and text on personal devices. I know some of you have got some familiarity with this. We're just bringing it to everyone's attention, given what we got going on, not only in our greater community here, but just to make you aware, because I know I've sat here long enough to know that there's been a few instances where people have asked for emails and then whether or not devices could be requested, and I'll leave it to your judgment about what your company would or wouldn't do, but we thought it was appropriate just to share this message from council about what the rules of the road look like. So I won't profess to being subject matter expert on it, but this individual is, and I encourage you to read it at your convenience. So thank you very much.
If I may,
Please,
what does the village say?
what does the village say?
Yes, about these positions.
Well, I think that's precisely the issue in a nutshell, is that to be aware of these policies, that my personal guess, Pat, and I'll let Mr. Simmons speak to this more specifically, but I think if I were viewing this, I would say it's better safe than sorry policy, and that if it's something related to village business and you were FOIA'd, most likely there would be a discussion. And we'd be asked to surrender any messages that were related to village business. Or if you were in a meeting like this and you were on a laptop and we were sending messages back and forth, for example, I think someone might say, what were you guys talking about? That would be the example. So that's why we're bringing to everybody's attention, because the world has obviously changed since we've been sitting here. So that's why we're bringing it up. And Mr. Simmons, you're welcome to comment.
Sure. And I'll mention, I mean, as part of training for working on this board, everybody's taken FOIA training or Open Meetings Act training. This is a portion of that. So it's basically just a reminder as case law occurs that what the view is of as far as what type of correspondence is considered FOIAble or open for the Open Meetings Act. The courts have provided additional direction as far as what that would be. So if you have a personal cell phone that you're texting other members of the board with, whether it's in a meeting or out of the meeting, discussing public business, that potentially could be FOIAble. And, you would be required to provide those types of correspondence if there's a request that comes in for those types of court discussions. So you can certainly have conversations, obviously everybody on this board knows each other for a long time, has worked with each other for a long time. You can have, conversations on things, as if you're friends with each other or whatnot. maybe you're not friends with each other, what it is. But certainly if there's a petition that's coming in, rather than discussing how, you might vote on or these are concerns you would have leading into that conversation, those types of conversations should not be taking place. Those should be reserved for in this boardroom, as this board's already well aware of those, that guidance before. So it's just, there's no documentation that our former attorney gave to the village based on recent case law. We're just passing along for reference.
How is the village's,
Mr. Jasper, you may want to speak into the microphone.
Here's the
I don't have a microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
How is the village's technology set up? So, do you operate out of a cloud? Are you operating off of hard drives located on premises? Is there? And the reason I'm asking is there, if the village is set up to be operating out of a cloud, I would think that it would be very easy to, number one, give us all village email addresses and allow us access to the cloud to be able to retrieve those email addresses. And even in some instances, if Outlook is the chosen, email, to have chat functions and those kind of things, and that would solve all these problems, because I may access it from a personal or work computer, but I'm going directly to the cloud, and everything that I'm doing related to the village stays within that cloud.
Sure. This looks further beyond that. So certainly if you're accessing documentation, if that's how we disseminate it to you is via a village email address, and you download it, via the cloud. What this guidance is looking at is you may still have your personal phone that you're not downloading the documentation on, but you may be texting Rick or Frank, having conversations, and those types of conversations would still be FOIAble, so that you may not be on a village server, but you would be responsible for.
Right, but you're sending these meeting agendas and such to our personal email addresses.
Correct.
So I open it up and I want to look at it. I may download it onto my system. So all of a sudden my laptop or tablet or whatever is subject to freedom of information, and I may have to bring it in and drop it off and let people tear into it. Whereas if I had a village email address and you sent me the email to my village, patjasper@carey.com, I just go in and I look at that, and if I download it onto the software systems that belong to the village, and everything is retrievable via the village. Anything that I can't, I'm not certain, but I don't believe that I could even download something onto my own personal computer when I am, on the village system.
So, Mr. Jasper, I'll try to, because I think I'm partly at fault for bringing this discussion forward, because I was the one that was sensitive about this. I've sat here long enough with yourself, and when this happened the last time, when we were FOIA'd, there was a request, and I had to go to our legal counsel. Mr. Dudek, I suspect you found yourself in these circumstances, and I was told by legal counsel at my company, under zero circumstances, are you surrender anything off of your company-provided laptop, period, the end, full stop. They have a legal issue, come and see us, they're not getting it. That was the issue. So take that a step further. Now, I know Pat Jasper, I know your cell phone number, we're texting. Where does that fall into? In both examples, the companies are providing devices, and where does this fall into? So that's why we're bringing it to everybody's attention. It's certainly a very sensitive issue. Personally, I intend to bring this up during the commissioner training to hear what other communities are doing around it. But I think that's why I'm kind of leaning back to where I began, which is better safe than sorry. If it's anything related to village business, be thoughtful about that, because at the end of the day, these issues are becoming more central to people's requests. And if there was any business going on between yourself and myself, or any other member for that matter, at the end of the day, we'd probably have to surrender that. That's my guess, legally. So that's why we're
Well,
bringing
and
it up.
Well, and that's the point, except for the fact that, 10-plus years, I don't think I've ever texted anybody here. However, I receive monthly emails from the village with documentation
was me,
related to the things that we're doing.
Yeah.
So, that's I think that's a bigger issue than whether you're texting or not. And I don't mean to be rude to anybody on here, but if anybody sent me a text about village business, I would just delete it. I wouldn't even bother responding, just because I'm not going to open myself up.
Yeah, you don't
to,
open that can
threat
of worms.
situation.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And that's perfectly fine. If you're receiving correspondence from the village and that's the only, when we send out the packet, that's the only correspondence that you have regarding the issue, we would basically say that's the only information that you have to report is an email that you receive from the village with that information. If there's nothing else, it's not have to be reported. But we certainly can look into how we get the information out to you again. If there's a way that we can do it electronically, directly from our servers, give you village emails, so we can certainly look into doing something like that if it simplifies the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That way we just go to a village email, look at what we need to look at, and we're off, and then there's no, did I use my phone, my tablet, my computer to
Right.
look at that packet?
Sure. Understood.
Is this what I request on behalf of the ZPA, Mr. Simmons, that the ZPA members would like their own devices?
Yeah.
I don't want my own
That's what
device, I just want my own email address within the village system.
Yeah, I get it.
And then I can access it.
Sure.
Only if the village has the capability to allow me to access it via multiple pieces of hardware.
Sure, it's a fair comment.
Because, again, if I'm accessing something through the cloud, it's not getting anywhere near whatever device I'm using.
Understood. So I didn't mean to open up a can of worms here, gentlemen, but we certainly wanted to make everybody aware of it. So,
I just wanted to ask that, I think Pat makes a great point, and I would just ask perhaps that, I know when I was on the board, there was a lot of conversation about things happening outside of the boardroom for a lot of different reasons, maybe not the same ones that we're discussing here. But nonetheless, whatever the village board, and I think, Pat, this is what you were getting to, whatever the village board follows, this committee ought to follow.
Absolutely.
And I think we ought to know as a committee, to your point, what the practice and the policy is. Brian, you probably can find that fairly easily. I don't know if it's in social media policy or where it might be, but somewhere there's a policy. And certainly as a trustee, I had a village email address. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have them as well. So that's my 2 cents.
thank you very much, Mr. Dudek, and that's appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, but that would be another password I'd have to try to remember.
Just do what everybody else does. Make it the same one that's used for everything else.
Jim, password 123 is not going to change for you anytime soon.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for a good conversation around that issue, and it is very important. That's why we bring it up, and thank you for the insights. And I think that's probably a good takeaway from tonight, is to see if we can't get everybody email addresses. That would probably solve part of the battle. But again, getting back to the text, and you've read it like I've read.
Yeah, it'd be personal texts
Yeah.
that we were discussing a particular case, that would be open to a FOIA request. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, so unless anyone has anything else, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You got it.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Patrick.